The SEC is the top conference. Some players have chosen the SEC over Oklahoma and Texas. Do you think OU and Texas recruiting will step up by joining the SEC? In short, yes, Brian, I do believe that. And so do they. You talk to folks at Texas or Oklahoma, one of many reasons, the first of which is money, but one of the other reasons why they wanted to join the SEC is because they know how real this is. To be clear, this is a real thing. I'll talk about it in just a second. Like, SEC edge in recruiting is a real thing. But before I spell that out, since Brian was asking about how they may improve in recruiting, I thought it was only rational to have Stats and Info, a.k.a. a hobbled producer Jesse, find out what the average recruiting ranking has been over the past decade for Texas and OU. But before I tell you what it is, what do you think it is? There's a perception out there that I think is about to get shot to pieces. You think to yourself, most of you, if I've heard you right, you think Texas has recruited at a very high level, they've just underachieved, right? And Oklahoma, meanwhile, hasn't recruited as good as Texas, but they've overachieved. Over the last decade, how about this? The average recruiting ranking for Texas is 11th in the country. Over the last decade, the average recruiting ranking for Oklahoma is 11th in the country. They've been dead even. Both of them, an average finish of 11th. So how about that perception versus reality? Anyway, the argument here from Brian, or the question, and I'm going to make an argument he's right, is they will come to the SEC and they will both see a boost in recruiting. Does this matter? It matters. It really matters. If you don't follow recruiting, you probably aren't aware of how much this matters. For instance, when Texas A&M came to the SEC, their folks immediately realized being able to go into the living rooms there, whether it's in Louisiana or East Texas, wherever. Jimbo goes wherever he wants to now. I think he recruits Alaska. But when you go in those living rooms and you tell kids, you are going to go into 100,000 seat cathedrals and you're going to compete against guys that you're eventually going to compete against on Sunday. There is no league better equipped to get you ready for the Sunday game, and you're going to play the highest level competition the sport has to offer. It mattered. Texas A&M recruiting improved, but it's not just because recruiting itself improved. Texas A&M as a university, not that they needed it, but as a program as well in the football side of things, they reaped the benefits financially of being in the SEC. And when you get paid a whole lot more money per year just because of which conference's helmet sticker you have on your head, then you can invest more of that year over year into football, and you can upgrade your infrastructure. And so it's no coincidence when you go on these campuses in the SEC, they look like they do. And it's no different in College Station. Now, like I said, they didn't need the financial help. But when they paired their limitless resources with that SEC rub, that's really all they needed. They just needed the rub. They were off to the races. And Texas A&M recruiting's been a lot better since they've been in the SEC. And I would argue the program has improved. They've got Jimbo Fisher there now. You see what they're doing now. Everyone knows what they're doing now. I can't promise you they'd be doing that if they weren't in the SEC. But the other thing about that is, think about the pitch. The pitch I just gave you is the same pitch that Kirby Smart uses, that Brian Kelly will use now, that Jimbo uses. When you go into the living rooms and you tell kids you're going to compete against the best in the country, it does one of two things. And either way, it works in your favor. It either appeals to kids because they are competitors in and of themselves, or it scares kids away a little bit. I'm not saying this is the only thing that matters in recruiting. I'm not saying kids that don't play in the SEC aren't competitors. I'm saying it matters. It's a factor. And coaches who have been on SEC staffs and then they've gone elsewhere, they will tell you, this matters. Now, if I'm good enough, if I'm a good enough recruiter, I can overcome it. And I can get you to come to Michigan or Penn State anyway. But I'm fighting against it. It matters. Here's what else it does. It's a natural filtration process. Because of the kind of mental fortitude that you need to have to willingly go play in the SEC, those kids tend to pan out. They're talented. That's why they got the offer. But then if they accept the challenge, it means, by and large, they're wired a certain way. There'll be busts, just like there are anywhere else in the country, but it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And Texas and Oklahoma will benefit from that. Now, how much will they benefit from that? That's the question. That has a lot to do with leadership. That has a lot to do with how Brent Venables will do at Oklahoma and Steve Sarkisian will continue to do at Texas. But ironically, even though it feels like Oklahoma's the more solid program right now, my list of questions is a little more lengthy when it comes to Oklahoma. Because I know what the blueprint is for Texas. Their blueprint is just recruit the state of Texas. It's that easy. Whether they follow through on it or not is a different question, but it's that easy in principle. And they had a top 5 class this past cycle, so they're off to a good start there. With Oklahoma, it's a very interesting time we're coming up on. We got a new staff out there. We've got Texas A&M and Texas, both with mega recruiting staffs in the NIL era, so they're able to leverage resource like they've never been able to leverage it before. I think that's the kindest way to describe what's happening right now. Leverage resource. Oklahoma has to recruit Texas to win. Will they still be able to at as effective a rate? They need to recruit California to win, or at least they have in the past. The guy who was doing it for them went out to USC. What kind of talent are they getting from the West Coast now and moving forward? What kind of talent are they getting from Florida now and moving forward? It's not that I'm speaking in a doubtful tone about Brent Venables. It's quite literally curiosity. I'm very curious as to how good they'll be over the next 3 or 4 recruiting cycles. But yes, either way, yes, they will have a net benefit from being in the SEC.